Oh my goodness. Seriously, I have to just do it. It's like I can tell myself I don't have to think about things that don't matter.
I was designed to do those things. How the hell does this guy know this about me?
It's impossible to not see.
When Dan read for my sister, she was like, he's psychic. She's like, how did you know that?
Yes.
She's like, it's human design, guys. Like, it's just a testimony of how legit it is.
Seriously, Danny was like FBI or CIA. He's like, how the hell does this guy know this about me?
Having my chart read, there were just thing after thing after thing that I was just like, wow, that's me.
This man is reading me and I've never met him before.
I was in the midst of one of the biggest emotional waves I've ever been in my life, and he saved my life.
It seems like everybody has the same reaction. It's that aha moment, and they want to find out more.
Hey, everybody. Welcome
Hi.
to episode number 40 of the Human Design Advantage. Today is, the 26th of February. And today it's me and Savannah. We're going to be going over the gates of, there's the gates of love, and then there is how they fit into our profile. And this is about the lines of our profiles and their various connectivity language, their love language, how they receive and give and take love within the profile itself. So we have a decent amount of slides today. We probably won't get through them all, and this episode may take 2 separate times. But before we get started, everyone knows what to do. Hit the like button and subscribe, please. Pass on to your friends, and don't forget to book an appointment if you want to know the rest about your human design. So, and all those links will be down in the bottom. Savannah, hey, we're going to talk about the profile lines.
Yes, I love the profiles. I feel like it helps make so much sense once you can learn about your own profile, and just also like your spouse or your partner or your kids. I feel like it makes a huge difference to understand the profile lines, because it really does impact your relationship and explain like how you function, what you need, things you need to understand about each other. So I love like studying the profiles and talking about the profiles. It's really fun.
It's so impactful what these profile lines do. And when we see partnerships where there's no resonance or harmony in the profile, that can be a sore spot or a source of difficulty for people. But yet there's no less degree of their ability to give or receive love. It's about really understanding what's in there and sort of what difficulties may come along with certain of these things, in our current world, the way we are. So
yeah, awareness makes all the difference, right? Like even though you might not have a profile that is in resonance or compatible, I feel like just understanding that is just one of the biggest hurdles to helping your relationship. It's just awareness, so these profiles are wonderful at helping do that. So
yeah.
So what were you going to say?
Well, just that this may take 2 episodes to really get through. Not sure, but it should be worth every last minute. I'm not sure. Where would you like to start, Miss Savannah? Because I'm really excited for people to see, hey, this thing is real. It's sitting inside of me, and I can really feel. We've been through profiles so much. People really understand by profile that, oh my God, this knowledge is really hitting home. Seems reliable. It's repeating. I keep being able to repeat the experiment. So let's take that into these profile lines. Which slide do you think you want to start with first? You have an idea?
Do you want to start with the one that has the 1 on the bottom and then it goes up to 6? And then
let's do that. Let's do that. Let's pull up that slide first. And got it all on one slide. Even better. So what we're looking at here now, we've been over this slide on the left before. And what we're looking at on the right is the various harmonies. What do I mean when I say harmony? So we've seen these profiles before. There's 12 of them. They go from the 1-3 and then to the 1-4, the 2-4, the 3-5, and they sort of snake all the way up until they start coming back down, the 5-1, the 5-2, the 6-2, and the 6-3. Each one of these profiles, your partner or anyone that you're working with, kids, what have you, if they have any of the harmonies or resonances to those profile lines, this will be a spot where you guys commune, where you come together. So starting with line 1, we got, between you and I, we got lines 1 through 4 covered, Savannah. So
yeah.
line
Oh,
one. Take it.
Oh,
We
I
take
was
it
just
away.
gonna say, like my daughter is a 2-4, and
Mhm.
then my husband is a 5-1, and those are one of the most compatible, harmonious profiles
Mhm.
that you can have, and they really do. They have like a deep, deep connection that me as her mother as a 1-3 that I just don't have that same.
Well, let's
Uh,
talk about that. So if she's a 2-4 and you're a 1-3, well, the 1 harmonizes with the 4.
yes.
So there's
Hmm.
a harmony there. So love language in that would be that your the foundations you build and the foundations you're a part of, you help drive foundation making into your daughter. And then she's the one externalizing in her own voice what foundations were made underneath her, and they might not even be on your behalf, right? She's not out
Yeah.
there externalizing as an advocate for her mother. She's just out there externalizing, but inside of
Hmm.
what she has to say and externalize and find opportunities with will have everything to do with the foundations you laid down for her.
Yeah.
She will never not love you in this way.
Yeah, a big thing about the 1-4s is they want a foundation, like you've been saying, and they can feel really insecure if they don't have all the information. They haven't been able to study all the information, go to all the authority figures, comb through all of the data, right? That's why they call the first line the investigator, is because they feel insecure if they don't have a groundwork of knowledge and information to digest and understand, because it helps them feel secure. They kind of always feel this like deep insecurity about themselves or their decisions or things like that, and so they have to research and investigate in order to feel kind of confident and secure, I guess you could say. And so for me as a 1 in my personality, I've noticed that big time. I mean, I've heard them even say even like a financial foundation is important to those who have a 1 in their profile. And so, like, I grew up in a home where there wasn't like a lot of financial stability, and so that really rocked me as a child. It's like I was missing that financial foundation,
Well,
and so
let's
oh,
let
sorry.
yeah, let's look into this. Let's read this off. This introspection, the chameleon, the empathy that the 1 must have in order to be a researcher, the building of foundations, that they're deeply curious. There's always a sense of wonder and awe inside of the first line because they're the first one seeing it. And they seek, when it's seeking authority, they seek to be the authority and they want to become the authority. That's sort of a driving force in them. And it's not to be, authority and the authoritarian per se, but it can turn out like that. But mostly it's just the more you know, the more you're the authority on the subject. And that's a thing that is deeply important. So how does the first line receive love? And what's this harmony? The fourth line is the harmony to the first line. So maybe let's read these two together. The fourth line would be the externalization of things, meaning they're speaking. Fourth lines have a fixed trip and they speak out their stuff and they can't help it. And that fixed trip just is the thing that they're onto as it relates what they're talking about. They're friendly. Friendliness is always a way of the fourth line. That abdicator is the one that's willing to sort of give up a little bit in order to keep the network going. They're always networking. They've got this process where they befriend and then they network and then they actually externalize to these people back and forth. And then sooner or later, they become influential. They look for the opportunity. That's why it's called the opportunist, to become influential. So becoming influential and influentialness is very important to that fourth line. Why? Because they're in love with the investigation that took place underneath. So there is a love language between these two profile lines. And so, but just back onto the first line, how is it that the first line it accepts and gives love, as according to the title of our show, the profile lines and how they give and receive and participate in the process of being in a loving union, friends, family, or partnerships.
Yeah. I would say for the first line, like, especially if you're dating someone who's a first line, if you're a first line yourself, they need time to investigate that other person. So it might take a little bit longer for them to really get to know everything about you. They probably wouldn't want to be rushed. I would, that's how it was for me, at least when I was dating. I was always kind of like cautious and like wanted to make sure I knew and understood everything about them. So I know they say like one-on-one time and spending lots of time together would be something a first line person would need in dating, or even like marriage, or once you're together as a partnership.
Yeah.
Um,
So in receiving the love, so they'll be able to receive the love of their partner when their partner allows the space for them to investigate and not necessarily move quickly on many things.
yes.
Things take time. So if your first line profile partner is moving slowly because they're still investigating and they have a certain insecurity about what's the scoop, with whatever it is they're into, let them have that. If
Yeah.
you need to take the lead for a moment because you see that your sweetheart is not quite ready, then and you're out in public with whatever, take the lead and let that person do what a chameleon does. They blend in and watch. That's what they're doing. The investigator can blend in and to any environment to be that chameleon. So allow that, right?
Yeah, I'd also say when it comes to like decisions, or when it comes to buying something, that first line is going to want to read all the reviews.
Yeah.
They're going to want to, and gather all the information from their friends. What's your experience from this product or this thing? So they need time to gather and study the information so they can build a foundation and feel secure with that decision or with that person.
A purchase is a good one. Yeah, that's a great common thing. The purchase. So let them do that. Let's say one partner is annoyed because their first line partner is always sort of taking all that time, like you just said. And let's say they have a second line partner that just wants to jump into the call of the thing. They're impatient. And this also, we're not even talking about types and so forth. Let's say one's a manifesting generator and they just want to move fast. And the other is, an emotional projector, right? And they're like, no, I need to take time. There's no truth in the now with it relates to $20,000 new automobile purchase with a payment for the next 5 years, right? That's right. Well, let's, so let the investigator investigate no matter how much you love that particular car, let's say. So you want to move fast, you love it, you took it for a test drive, it goes fast, it looks good, doesn't matter. If your first line partner puts the kibosh on buying it in that moment, then you allow that, let it take place.
Yeah. I would also say the investigators, we love to just find that topic we're so interested and fascinated with, and we can spend hours studying it. And so sometimes I've noticed with my husband, sometimes he gets a little annoyed, like, okay, like stop doing that. We got to do this. We got to get this done, And sometimes my first line is like, no, like I'm so deep into this, like this is so, I just let me keep studying. So sometimes he can take it personally that like how much I love to just investigate and study a topic, but he's wanting to use and spend the time differently. And so I think, of course, right, not being, there's a give and take with how you spend your time together, and it's a compromise, how you do that. But just realize I would say it's nourishing for a first line to just dive into, read for hours on a topic that they're fascinated with. Like for me, it's very nourishing. It's very like grounding for me. And so I would just say, realize that's something they need, and, give them that and understand that about them, and don't take it personally if they're wanting to read a book instead of like watch a movie with you, or, sorry, that's kind of weird, but we do, we're very kind of introspective, kind of get wrapped up in our own little world, our own little thing. And I know sometimes some of the other upper line profiles they can take that personally, but it's like, no, like, I love you. I just want to.
What happens when you look in on your child and you realize they're in love with something, they're into something, whatever the kid is, whatever it's doing. And then let's say you were going to tell that kid, oh, it's time to come in, or listen, we have to, whatever, X, Y, or Z. But you watch that kid, they're in love with what they're doing. And suddenly as the parent, you're like, I don't want to tear them away from that. Let's, and you go to your husband or your wife, it's like, let's hold off 15 minutes and see if Junior over there completes their in love with themselves process over there while they're digging for worms or drawing something or whatever it is. So witness your partner. They actually enjoy doing that. Savannah, you pointed out nourishing. It's nourishing them when they do that. So instead of considering your own impatience, where suddenly you're impatient, realize you have to let them finish that process. You have to let them go through that process. And if you look in on them and just remove yourself for a moment, you'll realize, I want to give this person my love in this way by letting them nourish themselves through their investigation.
Yes. Yeah. So my husband, he's a 5'1", so we do share that one in common, and that is the profile line we have in common with each other. But yeah, he's kind of figured that out now. He was like, here, let me take the kids so you can dive in and study that thing, or get that thing done. To me that's like huge, like brownie points, because
what a big difference. Yeah, what a huge difference. That must feel really good. In the past, there were times when that wouldn't be the case, and suddenly you'd feel rushed and you'd start to get a little anxious about all of that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
So,
and now Josh can see that. I said, now your husband, Jake, can see that.
yeah, and I also want to say, like, I don't know if this is going too in depth. Like, we do share that one in common, me and my husband do, but his is on the design side instead of the personality side. So I'm more consciously aware of that investigator within me. His is like, it's on the side where it's unconscious to him. So I feel like he's not as like intense with the studying. So I don't know, Dan, do you want to talk?
It'll show up with him when it's on the design side, the red, where it's unconscious to us. That's called the tunnel. The black lines are the roads, the red lines are the tunnels. You can participate with the roads and see it all. You can stand by the road, you can hitchhike, and you can wave to people on the road, but you can't participate with the tunnel because you're just staring at the mouth of the tunnel waiting for something to come out. So Jake finds himself suddenly investigating because it came out of a tunnel, and he might not even notice that until an hour goes by, and suddenly it's like, wow, I'm deep into this.
Yeah.
Because naturally he's going to do that, but it's coming out of the part of him that we don't have conscious access to easily. We have access into that. We see it as a trait in us. Other people will inform us that that's a trait. But if we move over to the slide that Savannah did about the first line investigator, let's do a little bit of that. Let's go up through these first 3 lines so we can see all the ways in which your first line profile person. What is it? It's the slide. What's it called, Savannah? The slide with the first line on top.
Oh,
good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So line 1.
The first line profiles are 1, 3. So that's me, my 1. And whenever the 1's in front, that means you're consciously aware of that investigator within yourself. And then the 1, 4. Sorry, I can't really see. It's kind of small. But then the other ones are 4, 1, and 5, 1.
Yep.
So they wouldn't be as aware of that investigator, correct, Dan? Right?
Yeah, absolutely. But that investigator is still going to be working away. They're not. There's no less investigator in that person. They're just not as aware of it on the front end of their life. It's sort of showing up for them, but they'll have unconsciously. They'll still have the same nervousness about not having a foundation. The same exactly what we were talking about. But first, we're talking mainly about these lines as it relates to the personality profile line, the first line. If you're a 1, 3, like on the very first one here, you see the first line on the left and the third line on the right of that slash mark. So we're just dealing with it as it relates to the personality. So this bonding strategy, this is a genetic strategy we have, and we're rather choiceless, but to fall into this. This bonding strategy is the pursuer or pursued, and the behavioral identity, it's called modesty. This modesty is the modesty to hang back and be all the things we pointed out a moment ago, the introspective. They're very introspective about things because they have to look inward and do their studying and figure out what their investigation is going to let them know. Yet as it relates to their bonding strategy, it gets very confusing because, hey, I would like to study all this, but suddenly I notice I'm caught up in being pursued or pursuing. So first lines, it's like the caveman line when it comes to their bonding, their role in their bonding as it relates to intimacy. So I like how you redid these, by the way. So in that pursuer or pursued, I mean, what's that like? That can be a lot of pressure. Suddenly you find yourself in pursuit of a mate. And this is sexual bonding. This is intimacy. This is the procreation side of the sacral center. This is everything to do with gate 59. And this pursuer or pursued is the caveman line. It's a caveman, cavewoman, knock them over the head, drag them home. Hi, honey, we have met, let's make a baby. And it may not be let's make a baby, but the genes are asking you to do that. That's why this pursuer or pursued, this is our oldest evolutionary trait. And that makes sense. It's a first line. So it's the foundation of the process. That first line is the foundation. We talked about this last night, Savannah. You made Jake wait, as I recall, because
Yes.
you both have this in you.
Yeah, so we both have the one, but the one is on his design body side, and he was very, very a pursuer, you could say, but I wasn't. I was the one who held back and I didn't like to pursue people. Like they liked me, they had to like come pursue me. So it's just interesting that I saw it both ways between two people who had the 5-1 versus a 1-3 profile. So, but so it's pretty much, it can move between either or. Is that right?
Either or, absolutely. So, but when you look back at how you guys finally came together, it was a process of one being pursued and one being being pursued, and one making the pursuit of the other. And so, and that describes partly how you guys got together. You were never unaware that, oh my God, I'm locked into this process with this man. So you first meet him and there's an attraction, let's say, right? Something's going on. I mean, we all remember that when we were young. We get that pitter patter in our body. We don't know what it is.
But I feel like that third line in my profile, right? That's bonds made and broken. And so I feel bad for my husband, but because when we were dating, it was like, I was just so all over the place. And I feel like my third line just came in and it was like, I'm in, I'm out. It was just constantly. So I kind of put him through the ringer. I feel bad. But I have like 7 or 8. I can't remember exactly how many third lines attached to my gates. And then I have like 6 lines. So I just have so much third line energy, which is bonds made and broken, right? That third line. So I'm kind of jumping ahead. We can get to that later.
We have to point all that stuff out. So and Jake, as the 5-1, hit that bonding strategy is the seducer or the seduced, right? So it's a gradual process where we go through these lines and these bonding strategies and the love language that will come out of them. The 5th line, the seducer or the seduced, that's what we want of our hexagrams. Everyone's looking for that 5th line expression in the hexagram. That's why the 5th line is projected upon so much. That's why they're in this projection field, and so much is expected of our 5th lines, because everyone wants that 5th line to be the most exalted version of what that hexagram is is and just
line is sexy, right? It's very attractive.
Yep. And so let's, if we keynote your all of these bonding strategies that were going on, Jake, I hope you're watching this so you can get a good laugh. So Jake unconsciously started pursuing, and then suddenly you were locked into pursuit. You were being the pursued. And suddenly in that moment, you guys were totally aware, I'm being pursued. I am pursuing. You guys knew what was going on. It wasn't like it was a secret. You were telling your girlfriends. He was telling his dude friends, right? You guys were thinking about each other at night or not, and you didn't know because it's not right. All of this stuff. And here's Jake. Jake comes along sexy. He comes along confident in a way that appears to be the Casanova, the seducer. So the seducer was pursuing, and the bonds made and broken were like, okay, I'm in. No, I'm back out. Oh, I'm back in. And I'm back, because the 3rd line is trial and error. I have to try it a little bit. No, back out a little bit. Try it a little bit. This is a bonding strategy. This is how we get close. And so he had to keep loving you and wanting to pursue you while you were being pursued. And sooner or later, your investigation showed up where you both were like, investigation complete. And the next thing you know, you guys are now romantically involved in getting married. Essentially.
Yeah, I feel like being a 1-3 profile, I feel like their partner has to make them feel really secure and safe and like, hey, I'm not going to leave you. Like, if you need to take space, whatever, like, I'm here for you, like, and that is what my husband did when we were dating, was he was just so reassuring. And so, because I feel like I was just like all over the place, right? Because the first line is fear, motivation, and they're feeling insecure. They need like a sure foundation and a partner who's like, I'm going to be with you no matter what. I'm here for you. So I feel like 1-3s or just anyone first line profiles, they need someone who's secure and a safe place and a safe foundation for them. Because, if you're like, no, I'm out, then that person's like, oh, okay, that foundation's not secure. Like, I can't trust. I feel like there has to be lots of trust built for those first line profiles. And also, I'd say the third line profiles, but I don't know. Sorry.
Well, that trust shows up in the investigation that you're trying to discover things with. And then all the love language of whatever gates you have of the love gate starts to really, really super duper show up. I don't think we should go through all the items on this slide per se, because that's more of a profile.
Something I just wanted to say that was in the book was that first lines, they are the ones to share out the information with the other profile lines. They're kind of the ones getting out the ground facts or the data to give to those other profile lines for them to take it and use it and externalize it.
Yeah.
And so I kind of say that's an important part of that first line, is getting the ground information down and then sharing it out, becoming that authority in or just whatever field that you're in. But sorry, I feel like we've been talking on that first line a long time. Do you want to jump to the second line or wrap up first line?
Let's not rush. So as it relates to the behavior, the person is going to be modest before their investigation is over. After their investigation is over, how they'll project out into the world is with authority. It's called the authoritarian, but it's not necessarily the boss authoritarian per se, but let your partner become the authority on the things that they've investigated, like witness that. And there's can be a clash between people, because what if one person says I'm the authority and the other person says, no, I've done the investigation, I am. You're going to have to now find a way between you two as a love language to be able to get together, is to allow them to do that. Allow both parties to actually do that, and then you can have a democratic process maybe where you compare notes at the end and don't take it personally. So you have to allow space for this. If it annoys you, you have to recognize that's your annoyance. That's not their fault. So part of the love that we give ourselves is when we know we love ourselves, we have to take this stuff in deeply and recognize everything that goes on inside of me has nothing to do. It's not the other's fault that I'm annoyed at the thing. It's my internal annoyance. I mean, I'm creating that annoyance inside of me. You could share that, but it's still ours. And so there's a big responsibility for us to take all the things that go on inside of us and recognize that's inside of me. That is inside of me. And that's just something that has to happen. The empathy is this perspective that they have, where the empathy is the empathy to listen. And it's limited. They have limited empathy. If your first line doesn't show up with infinite empathy and you project upon them that you will be the greatest listener and with all this empathy to sort of just listen to me, that's only going to last in a limited amount. Be aware of that. First lines have to be ultimately creative. Their creativity shows up in a pulse, and there is no rhyme or reason to the pulse. It's independent of will. And so you can't ask them to be creative in the moments that they're not, and you can't ask them to stop being creative in the moments that they are. Again, this is all for you to understand what your first lines go through. How do they feel secure? They provide for themselves. You know, when your first line says, I got it, this is mine, I'm going to figure it out, let them do it and figure it out. You know, let them do it and be supportive and say, hey, listen, I'm here in the background while you're doing that. And if you try and tell them, oh, if you do this, you're going to make that mistake. If you do this, you're going to do that mistake. You know, you can do that and try that. But if it's not received, don't take it personally. Don't try to correct the first line's investigation. You know, this is an important way to love that person. And so these are these are just these roles that are always played out in the first line through all of these 4 profiles you see here right under the line 1 profile. And let's look at how different that second line profile is, so we can start to talk about this. So that second line profile, there's the 2-4, the 2-5, the 5-2, and the 6-2. So you see how we're getting through all 12 profiles are going to get got through in this process. What are second lines after? If we can go back to the other slide real quick and read the keynotes of the second line process. So what harmonizes with the second line? The fifth line. 5s harmonize with 2s and 2s harmonize with 5s. So wherever a second line runs into another second line or a fifth line, that's an immediate attraction. That's something that feels good. But the second line is the hermit. They've got a little bubble around them. You can't really break through to them. They're sort of, they're not always wanting to be influenced by the other. They're shy. They have to be pulled out of their shell. They're naturally gifted at something. They're all second lines. Wherever there's second lines in your profile, that's their natural gift. They naturally they'll naturally show up with a gift of some sort, a knack for a thing, and it makes them look like they're a natural. Part of what this is their projection. Second lines genetically through their aura are projecting outward. Hey, I might be a natural at this. And they're being democratic about all of that. They're self-absorbed. They need lots of alone time. And they need to be called out by others and noticed for their talents. They need to be called. And if they don't receive that call, there is no love. If they are not called into a love and a romantic interest, then it doesn't exist for them. So that's just a thing. Can you guys hear my phone ringing in the background?
Oh, just lightly, not too bad.
I'm going to go shut it off, but go ahead and say something to that, Savannah.
No, yeah, my daughter's 2-4, and I've completely seen her be that little hermit and just want to go up in her room and I'd say, and I've totally seen her just be this natural with art and with dance. And sometimes it's like, how do you do that, Coco? And her name's Colette. We call her Coco, and she's like, I don't know, like I noticed second lines can't really explain how it is they're able to do something because it just comes naturally and effortlessly for them. So kind of the first line and the second line are kind of opposites, where the first line they want to be able to explain how they're able to do what they can do, but that second line can't really. The second line's like, I don't know, I can just do it. So
right, and they don't know why. So whereas the first line has this beautiful way of coming to awareness through a sense of fear, and the fear is, guys, let's take the word fear out of something that even sounds remotely bad and put it into everything that sounds awesome all the way around. Fear drives intelligence. And they're just these tiny little fears like, if I turn left before I get gas, I might run out of gas. That's a fear, right? If I get onto the highway before I get gas, next stop isn't for 100 miles, I might run out. Logical fear drives you to get gas. We need that. Investigators have that all over the place. So it's always getting them to practical stuff, essentially, right? But the second line doesn't have that fear. All they have is uncertainty. So your second line has a love language that starts out with uncertainty. And that fits into, if we go back over to the other slide and we look at that second line, profile line, we start to see what's that bonding strategy? Shyness and boldness. So your second line, if they start coming at you with the harmony to the second line is the fifth line, right? And what did we say the fifth line's bonding strategy was? The Casanova, the femme fatale, the seducer or the seduced, trying to condition the other or let them condition you. If you have a second line profile and suddenly you see that person trying to seduce you, that person is acting out of the harmony and sort of in transference into what they're not. And it's a common theme. watch for these transferences. The harmony is so attractive that we transfer into it. So suddenly, I remember in my younger days, I would do anything to set up a situation. If there was a girl I really liked and I suddenly couldn't stop whatever, I was going through my own internal hermit process. That was all inside, that was all me. She had no idea. But I would try and set up things where suddenly I would look very attractive to the other person. You know what I mean? I try and be in the right place at the right time. And if I knew I was going to see that person, suddenly I'm on the floor doing 100 push-ups before I went out to meet them. So I'd be pumped up to try and be seductive. Never worked. It never really worked. And in the occasions where it did work, the relationship itself was no good. I didn't get in as myself, because as soon as I felt comfortable, I fell right back into my hermit self. Yet that person, I was selling them as if I'm the seducer or the seduced, as if I'm really attractive. And that was, so I was false advertising on my part.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, because the second lines, they're very cooperative, they're very shy. So it would make sense why a fifth line who's more seductive and more, I guess you could say, like, assertive.
Yeah.
That's why they would be attracted to each other, because that seducer and the shy, that's almost like the shy person needs someone to pull them out and draw them, and that fifth line is more prone to doing that. So that makes sense why they're in resonance with each other.
They're totally in harmony. To resonance is when it's the same line, but yeah.
I'm sorry, resonance. I get those two mixed up.
No, it's all good. I mean, they do resonate to each other. There's no question, but we call it harmony just because it's.
There you go. Sorry.
Yep, but
also, I remember it saying in the book that the second lines, sometimes they're not aware of how gifted they are at things, and so sometimes they need someone outside of them to tell them, like, oh wow, like, you're really good at that, you should pursue that, or like, because sometimes second lines are always kind of looking out to gather information of who they are, right?
Totally. Well, the second lines, because they so they resonate to uncertainty, and whereas the first line resonates to insecurity. Now, these two things are very close together, and that makes sense because lines 1 and 2 are the base binary. They're the foundational binary. But as it relates to these motivations underneath, the first line has that resonance to fear, using fear as an intelligence gathering mechanism. Jennifer's got a first line in her body graph. She's constantly using what if before she's gaining her intelligence, and I'm constantly externalizing that. I have complete harmony with Jen's profile, and I notice we lock back and forth with all of that. So it's not fear anymore with the second line. It's like this innocence of just hope. Second lines will sort of harmonize and resonate a little bit somewhere along the line, and just hope. They're hopeful, so they can keep up a certain hopefulness to things. But they don't go for the deep button on a second line until that second line has been educated. The second lines need a great deal of education because they don't know what they have a knack for. We don't know people are looking in on us. We're the radio station broadcasting out. We might have all of these knacks. We have no idea who's tuning in. The radio station doesn't know who tuned in. They just know they're broadcasting out. And so second lines try to hermit themselves because they know they're broadcasting out. So love language is, if you have a second line profile, you let that person be alone. Let them hermit themselves, half the time or part of the time. They are tuning out. They don't want to necessarily be influenced until they feel called into that influence. And so part of this love language will be love them for the knacks that show up. And if you recall, the first 3 lines of the hexagram is called the lower trigram, and it's focused on its inner journey. The lower trigram lines, as it relates to profile lines, first and foremost say, what's the deal with me as it relates to me possibly being in a relationship with you? It doesn't, they're introspective generally. They're all looking, the first 3 lines look inward, and they're trying to just see me, what am I in all of this? So let them love you in that way, because when they realize who they are as it relates to you, the other person, suddenly they're always there. They're called into that relationship, even if you can't tell, because there's a certain aloofness to second lines. Their behavioral norm is their behavior is successfully sidestepping the requirements of others through isolation. Notice
Yes.
successfully. They successfully sidestep. Where's that second line? They're just not participating. Can we make
Yeah,
them
that's
participate?
my
Nope.
daughter. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like anytime we start doing chores and it's like, hey guys, everyone come in, and she will just always find a way to get out of it.
She's reading a
Go
book.
into a room to get out of doing the work. So that's just funny you say that, because I've seen that in her.
Well, that's
So
what
in a
that.
relationship though, do you just let them do that, or are you just kind of like, no, get back here, do the dishes?
Well, you find out where your aggravation point literally is, and then you have to share that with them. Again, if they're a generator, that language starts out with asking them, hey, do you want to do the dishes? Do you want to help? And demand that they give an honest response, and at some point in time, obviously, if they're your children, you have to demand it. And second lines need that, because that's part of their education. You cannot hermit yourself forever. Others will make demands upon you because they see that there's talents. They see there's a little natural in there. And every second line that gets going on a little task, what happens with them is sooner or later, they generally start to get into it.
Yes. That's
And
what
next thing
I've
you know,
noticed
you
with
pull them
Glenn.
away.
Like she'll start doing the dishes, and then she's getting all creative with how she's washing them, or with the bubbles or something like that. So yeah, I completely see what you're
Think
saying.
of how inside that process is, inside the shell that protects them from everyone else, because second lines are in a bubble. They don't even know people are looking in on them. They're always surprised about all of this. And so don't always go for the deep button just because you see that they had a knack of something. So people think the second line is like really talented. What is all that talent? Just there's something in them. And then they push for the deep button on that, not knowing that the second line hasn't been educated in that. They had a surface talent and they seem to excel quickly in a moment. But they themselves are uncertain. Remember, uncertainty. They hope they will become certain, but they're
So
uncertain.
do you just have to, if you have a child or a partner who has a 2 in their profile, do you just try to help establish certainty and confidence in themselves?
Absolutely. And you let them have that process. And because the second line is just so they're out of the picture. Second lines are like they're not paying attention per se. They can be looking as if they are paying attention, and if you don't quiz them right after, you're going to find out that they didn't hear every word. They have
Yes.
this limited perspective of not listening, and so quiz them afterwards and stop getting mad at them that you had to quiz them. They're not designed to listen to every word. Look at a second line's listening as if it's a little bit like a staticky line where you're saying, hey, you're cutting out, I only hear every third word. That's what's going on in them sometimes. Unless you see them locked in. If they're locked in, they're called into what you're saying. They're receiving the call. So part of the love language for the second line profile in any of these profiles is allowing them to get to that point where they feel called into it. Remember, this bonding strategy is shyness and boldness. You call them out too soon, they become shy. They're not ready necessarily. You still got to knock on that window and break through that bubble. That's a bonding strategy of the second line, meaning what forces will actually break through to me such that I actually realize I want to bond with them. Because on the other side of that shyness is boldness. And I can tell you from experience that boldness knows no bounds. Next thing you know, everything's possible. Let's run around on the beach naked. That's a little bold, don't you think, Dan? Well, if you go with me, then we're doing it. And it's boldness sometimes to the point of like ridiculousness,
Yeah.
So,
I've seen that in my daughter. She can be really cooperative and shy and kind of easygoing. She's a 2-4.
yeah.
But then she can be really sassy and bold and like in your face. So
Right.
it's
Boom.
interesting to watch it. Yeah.
Boom,
So
it shows up in your face. It's like it just shows up in your face because the boldness came out. Because again, second lines investigators investigate. When they're investigating, it's a slow process. As they investigate, they're more and more secure right? They're more and
Yes.
more, they have that security that's going on there that goes up. It's a path that goes up. You can chart it. Second lines, just suddenly they burst into the realm with boldness where that wasn't that before. Everything with the second line is being called out of them. It's not this, it's a slow process for learning, but it's not like you can tell that they're gradually learning.
Yeah.
So give your
Oh,
second
and
line
then,
that time.
mhm.
Yeah. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say, because I know both the second line and the fifth line have a projection field, but it's kind of reversed, right?
Yep.
So the second line, it's like in their aura that says, "Hey, look at me," but you don't realize as a second line that your energy and your aura is sending out that signal. Hey, look at me, you
Right.
know, and so they get attention, they get noticed without them even realizing it, right?
Right. No, it's
Mhm.
totally true. I had a great experience the other day at a Patriot meeting. You know, I'm working on becoming an American state national, and every
Mhm.
American should do this at some point. And so as I keep going through this process, I'm realizing various things. We were at a meeting, and the first presenter that just showed up to introduce the main presenter, she had something to say. She had her things to say, and she was, you know, she had a voice that projected medium. You know, she was smart. She knows a lot more than I do. And as I was standing behind her, I recognized in the moment my boldness came out. I was shy at first. I remember I'm sitting there, I'm in front of the crowd. I'm not sure, do I know everything I need to know? And as soon as she was done, in contrast to what she did, I boomed out this loud voice that said that, you know, things like, hey, listen, if you're still in the system this way, they own your children. And I start coming
Mhm.
out with things I knew they were called out of me, and I'm speaking loudly, and all of a sudden everyone's like glued in. And because I know my profile, I know what's happening in that moment. And my knack
Mhm.
showed up because boldness came out, and then the main presenter was able to present everything, not because of me. The three of us made a triad. I just remember this moment of suddenly I'm bold. But
Mhm.
had I not been the first speaker, I might have been shy for all I know. I just don't know. But
Oh,
in
you feel like you
response,
kind of triggered that in you to
yes,
come out type thing.
as a generator, in response to what the first one was saying, I was like, no, this needs to get out louder. Hey, listen, you guys have been duped, and there's two of everything, and they own your children. You gave them away at birth. And here's that's my loudness, my voice. You can hear it coming out of my voice. And all of a sudden everyone's like, what? I went straight to the thing that I know is most important to everyone, their children. But other
Mhm.
things on the second line, that Democrat, like you said, they're just trying to get along. Second lines
Mhm.
are, hey, if you want the house blue and everyone else wants the house painted blue, I don't really care. Paint it blue. They're just
Mhm.
democratic about all that. They'll go with where the democracy says to go mostly.
Oh, hey Dan. I can't remember if this is the sixth line or the second line, but they say usually second lines know right away, rather like whether they will like someone or click with someone or not. Is that true? Is that I can't or is that the sixth line?
That
Second
might
line?
be a six line thing. You know what?
Oh, okay.
Every type I think has that as a capacity, but they still have to go through their process.
Okay.
Because I have seen attraction at first sight with me, but I don't know what the heck's going to really happen over the next days and weeks and months. God forbid we get married. I don't know what any of that's going to be,
Mhm. But also the second line, it's like they have to be called out and said like, hey, you're really good at this, you should do this, and then that's when they really investigate into that thing, right? They need to be
Absolutely. And it doesn't even require the other to call them out. Sometimes they are just called by the circumstances. Again, we go back to strategy, type, and authority. If you're a projector, you are recognizing I am called into this, and or someone recognizes you and calls you out. It is the other that calls you out. You do let them call you out, but that calling it's both. It comes from the other and it comes from within. It is everything to do with being called. Think about it. I'm not called. I have no idea. I don't even know what's going on. I can't tell what my foundation is. I'm uncertain about everything. Uncertainty is a theme. I certainly hope it'll work out. And then suddenly I'm called. They're one moment to the next. Suddenly I'm called into a thing, and like I'm reading, I'm listening, I'm whatever it is. When I'm called, I focus on it all. When I'm not called, I can't focus anything. And then
so then they need the call to be able to focus in on
very much so that it has to feel like a calling, or it's hard to get my focus. And so these callings are minor, tiny little ones, like Coco doing the dishes. And suddenly she's called into how the bubbles are moving across the plate. And the next thing you know, she's getting every speck of dirt off of every plate perfectly, because she can't help it. Can't leave a speck behind, you know, wipes down the counter and all of it, you know, and she's very happy with her work. And now she doesn't want to go back to it. So as soon as she's out of it, if you say, hey, you missed a spot, she's like, she's no longer interested.
Yes. Yeah.
Come back to her room and you're like, you missed a spot, you know, it's like, I don't care anymore.
Yeah. So Dan, as a 2-4, what did you notice within yourself that helped you in your relationships? Like when your partner did something, what really made you feel like supported and loved as a second line?
Very little that helped me in time to be of a success in any relationship I've had in the past. I actually haven't been in a solid relationship for quite some time, 5 years, because I'm waiting for the right awake soul. And then what I have noticed, what would have been helpful, is the fact that they would allow me to start out shy and uncertain. Because and I'm a dude. Think of the dilemma of that. So I'm a dude, and so in our conditioned world, the female in that situation might want their man to, you know, be the bold one right away, you know, show, right? This is a conditioning in our world. And so that right away might, you know, turn some people off in the very beginning at a thing. Okay. Yeah. To me, I'm awake to my nature. I love me. And so if that actually turns you off a little bit, then you're not right for me yet. You know?
Yeah. I like how you pointed that out, because I feel like it, like gender roles, right? Like the men are supposed to be the pursuers and the bold, you know, but if you're a second line guy and you want to be shy and kind of need someone else to kind of pull you out of your shyness, then that can be kind of hard, because you're almost like designed not to fit into that male gender role. Is that kind of what you're saying?
That's exactly right. And so what did I do when I was young? I lived out only the boldness. Yet I paid no attention. When I say paid no attention, I suffered by paying no attention, because I was constantly uncertain through the nervousness of my shyness. Shyness and boldness is a bonding strategy, so that when the right partner for bonding, don't forget, bonding's about making more. When that right partner for that bonding shows up, they will break through the shyness. And there were times, now that I think about it, my third girlfriend ever in life, she allowed time for all of that. My very first one, now that I think about it, she literally took the bold position at first, in order for me to break through my shyness. And next thing you know, I'm bold, and I couldn't get enough of it. I couldn't get enough of her. I would ride my bike for freaking 3 hours to get to her house if that's what it took. Snowstorm, didn't bold. I would take risks to get to see her. I mean, you name it. You know,
just understand, with a second line, with that shyness, they might need someone to be more of the one to initiate, or to be the one who's more confident and initiating in the relationship in the beginning, right?
In the beginning, yeah, absolutely. And at least, if not the initiator, true initiator, that the second line knows when they're being called into something. You can literally just spend time with them and let them know with your language, hey, I'm not in a hurry. Let's take our time. Let's see what happens next. That alone might be enough to take a second line from shyness to boldness in that moment. We don't know, but be patient with that, because the first line is pursuing, or they are pursued. They're totally aware that they're in a game of cat and mouse. You know, I mean, look again, it's our foundational line. So it's our oldest genetic way is the pursuer or the pursued. Just look at two deers chasing each other through the woods, you know, a male and a female deer. You know, that's a process for them. One's pursuing, one is pursued. They both know what's going to happen instinctually, you know, but boy, the female's she's running like a dog to try and get away. And the buck is running after them. And sooner or later, they're going to mate and have babies, you know. Yeah. They know they're caught up in that pursuit. There's no doubt. But the second line isn't necessarily aware that there's a pursuit going on. They don't know. They've got no foundation. All they've got is uncertainty and a bunch of little knacks that show up in the form of a talent that suddenly can get called into existence and be something. They show up with loads of little talents and knacks that when you put them together, they become a mix of, oh my God, this kid got called out into this mission. Now they're on a mission and you can't freaking stop them. That played out incredibly in my younger days. I would fall in love with a girl and that shyness would turn into boldness, and that boldness was my love for them, and I would do anything. No one could get in the way. No other pretty girl could walk by and take my attention ever. It never worked. And I
so
had
they can go, second lines can go from like 0 to 100, right? Once they're called.
Yes, in that calling. And so we don't, the aspire to role, they need harmony and all of that. Says aspire to. So in their creativity, you will get their most creative bonding when there's harmony in you guys. You will get their most creative bonding when they're limited perspective, called bigotry, which is not really bigotry. It's just that they're not always listening. When you allow them to, they're not always listening at first until you bonded with them more, and you educate them that they have to listen to this so that they get a chance to respond back that I don't want to listen to that, or I do want to listen to that, or we'll find a happy medium. You're always striking a happy medium, because look at a second line like they're a child. They don't know. Children are filled with uncertainty because they don't know yet. The educational path of them is critical. And then the security strategy is, in the beginning, they will be depleting. And as the education starts to go up and they know and they're called, the next thing you know, all they want to do is nourish as a way of creating a strategy. They emotionally, they'll advance and they'll withdraw, and they'll advance and they'll withdraw as they find out what they can nourish with the harmony that they get, the stuff they feel like listening to, and their ability to just come out and be bold from their shyness into boldness. So the love language in this is very easy. Let them be all of these things. That's just an important thing. Let them be it. And don't forget, we're on an evolutionary chart here. First line, that's been there from the beginning. As we started to evolve, the second line started to come into place. There was no room for shyness when our average lifespan was 15 years. There was both, there was pursue and pursued. That's what there was. The caveman, the cave woman, just, we have to make more or our species won't survive. But so somewhere as we start to live a little bit longer, the second line profile started to show up more as it relates to a bonding strategy. And there was time for a little bit of shyness before a little bit of boldness, because the shyness is uncertain, right? They don't know what's going to happen next. Whereas the pursuer and the pursued, they're aware. The pursuit's either going to fail or it's going to succeed. And they both know they're locked in a pursuer or pursued dealio in order to bond and get together and have that intimacy connection. Correct, you and Jake knew you were locked into a process of pursuing and being pursued. You were both aware.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, totally.
So my guess is Jake wasn't looking too much at other girls and you weren't looking too much at other guys while you completed this pursuer-pursued process.
Yeah.
So,
One thing I was going to ask, because I remember them saying, like, especially if you're a 2-4 profile, because I know nowadays everyone's dating on the apps, like the Tinder and the things like that. And I heard if you're a 2-4 or a second line, those types of apps can make it harder. Is that right? Would you say so, Dan? Like, it's harder to meet people and really connect, and as a second line profile?
Before I met Human Design, I tried one of those back when eHarmony was a thing. Each one of them failed. I went out on several dates. They all failed. Every one of them. As soon as I got there, I turned into a bigot. I don't like you. I don't like what you're telling me. You're trying to tell me stuff. You're trying to break through my bubble. You're trying to influence. Don't try to influence me. Okay, lunch is done. How about you just shut your trap? I'm out of here.
What's the best way for a second line to meet somebody? Is it, like, I know 2-4s, they need to be
in their network.
Their network is what helps them find people to date or whatever. But
the 2-5,
I don't know, what would be your advice for a second line who's wanting to meet
to meet people is to allow themselves the abundant amount of time needed to be out in public and be around places. If you're a 2-4, it's with your friends. If you're a 2-5, it's just out in the world generally, because you have an attraction field. It's a double attraction field. You start recognizing what are you attracted to. Same thing with a 5-2. You have to sort of call yourself out. And if you're a 6-2, you're looking at the ultimate of trust the trust in the soul. You have to feel the soulmate type of connection. But all of them with the second line in common to all of that, meeting somebody is a matter of serendipity. If you start trying and trying and trying, you're being bold before you're shy. So it's a
So it's like
dilemma.
second lines can't force it, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
They can't.
Blind dates, that's madness. But do it anyways so that you can find out. One out of 50 times it might not be madness. You don't know. Or 1 out of 20. We don't know. But, you know, our friends, they love us, right? You know, and they find out you just broke up with someone and some time's gone by and your friends try and set you up with somebody, or they had a friend they'd love you to meet, right? You know, I've heard this language come out of everyone's mouth over time. And I've done the same thing for others. You know, I had a friend, one of my best friends, I set him up with the person he's been with for the past 10 years now.
Oh, really?
Yes, I was called into setting them up. It was a beautiful thing. And you should have seen the stuff behind the scenes to make them, you know, come together. I set up a whole thing for them, but I was called into that. So, but
because I know a lot of people, I heard it's just harder to date nowadays, and harder to meet people, because I feel like people are just kind of wrapped up, you know, or it's like everything's on social media or Tinder, so it makes it hard to, you know, meet and connect with people. And so the second lines, maybe it could make it a little harder because they are a hermit, right? And so they do kind of like to just be in their own space, and so it kind of takes someone pulling them out and being pursued. So sometimes they might feel like they don't have control over who they're meeting or who they're dating.
Yeah,
right?
That's a terrible uncertainty. And now that you just said it, it really brings up the one thing to do is you're pulling them out of your shell, but not with any expectation. Don't you lay that expectation trip on them. You start dating, you date platonically, essentially, and just get close. Just get close, and don't even allow them in. Even if they think they're trying to get in, you know what I mean, and get, you know, on the bonding strategy, we're talking about intimacy, but I mean, at any rate, you know, don't let them get past, you know, holding hands and maybe a first kiss, and when you're dating, so that shyness can have its time to go through its process and start to imagine its own boldness, and they will go through their own process of heating themselves up, just like with the pursuer and the pursued. Don't forget, this is the second line. It's built on the foundation of pursuer or pursued. All of our bonding is based on pursuing or pursued because it's the foundation. This is just a level up from that, a different level of that. There's a new layer of sophistication to that where it's going to take a little more time. Allow the pursuit to suddenly slow down and come grinding to the slow point where you don't even get past like holding hands or being in each other's presence or saying, I might have feelings for you. You know, I feel certain things. Don't say, do you feel it for me? Don't ask the second line, well, do you feel the same about me? You can ask them, but as long as you preface it with, it doesn't matter what you say, because I have my feelings towards you and it doesn't matter. So, because the second line, what are they going to say? They're going to say, I can't, uncertainty.
Oh, okay.
Uncertainty, because that's a second line theme, just plain uncertainty. Maybe. You know, now that's enough to break off any first date. What do you mean, maybe? This date's over. Oh, good. Thank you. I'm glad this date's over because I can tell you're not right for me if you don't accept the word maybe.
Yeah. So they just need someone who's like patient and not expecting anything and just being patient with the second lines for them to come out.
Yes, being patient, allowing that patience to be a point of harmony between you two, not friction, allowing that to be a point of their limited perspective, which can only take in so much. It seems like bigotry because they basically stopped listening to what you're saying. Allow that person to be democratic about all of that and allow them to go into their role of wanting to nourish, because it turns into advancing. They will advance as they can feel they're nourishing you and nourishing themselves in between, and allow them all the first three lines of the hexagram to be doing the inner process. They're looking in on themselves, what appears to be selfishly, in a way to go ahead and allow that investigation inward to turn into something that they can now see themselves in with you. They're looking inward at themselves so that they can see who are they in relation to you. They have to learn that. You know, the upper trigrams are already seeing at the other. They already see the other, and they're learning, you know, who am I? They're seeing who they are in the relationship generally. And
That's,
you know,
that's the lines 4, 5, and 6. That's what you mean by
yes,
upper trigram.
yeah, which we're going to end up doing next week. And so
Yeah. So we've been on an hour and 4 minutes. Do you want to like wait
yeah,
on the
no,
third line?
let's start
Or-
doing that third line, and we may have to pick up from it, but let's do that third line. And
Okay.
so go back to the where it is the profiles, where we had the profile lines, and that third line was the martyr, and that third line is trial and error. And it is, what else is that third line? That third line is adaptive. It's mutative. It's always able to adapt. It's looking to sustain. It's always bumping into things. You can see that third line martyr, trial and error, this mutative change. They're the great change agents. The third line is the great change agent. They're always adaptive, meaning you knock them down, they get back up. You knock them down, they get back up, because sustainment and resilience is one of the things that they're doing. They're the explorer, because they're always bumping into something new, and they're learning everything through what we call mistakes. But we have to change this word now. Third lines can't make a mistake. Third lines only find out what's new. So part of the love language here, and that third line has a harmony to the 6, the 3 to the 6, and the 6 to the 3. These are these profile harmonies. So if you have a third line in your life, they don't make mistakes. They bump into this and that. And what else you want to say about the third line before we go to the next slide?
I don't know. I'm trying to think. I feel like third line, they need to have room to explore. Yep. and change. Like, seriously, I'm a completely different person than I was when I first got married. And I know that's very common of third lines to just completely, evolve and adapt.
Yeah.
And so they say third lines, don't try and make them fixed and stay the same, because the third lines are meant to adapt and evolve, and very mutative line, right? Isn't it like the most mutative? Is that third line?
Totally. The third line is the most mutative, because it now has a notion that it's leaving its own focused on inner journey. It's still focused on its inner journey, but it's got an inkling that there's something on the other side of that gate. Remember, the first 3 lines are all self-absorbed into the gate process. That's it. They don't really see beyond the gate easily. They have to be shown. So as this is happening, the third line is the first of these 1, 2, and 3. They're the first of the bottom 3 lines to start to be bumping into the other, where they start to realize there might be something on the other side. There is something on the other side. In that realization, they must break the bond and then start the bond back up. And so you and Jake got together, like you had said earlier, you were constantly breaking the bond and remaking the bond. You're like, oh, Jake, I'm not sure. Let's talk tomorrow, right? Maybe, yeah.
I feel like I put him through the ringer, because my third line.
Your third line put him through the ringer while your first line was investigating. Think of how the beauty of these 2 lines together in a profile. While I'm investigating, it's almost like what a reflector does. I'm going to sample, and then I'm going to break this bond. Our job to love a third line is to realize that broken bond is not a broken bond of your relationship. It's just they're getting out of your aura.
They need space.
And your space and your field, or whatever you want to call this thing. So
I know we were kind of talking about that in the Vortex group about how third lines, like, sometimes we just need space. Like if me and my husband have a disagreement or something like that, he wants to be reassured. But my third line is like, no, I just need some space away. Like, it's not that I don't love you. It's just really, and it's also with my kids. It's like just constantly being just around people, I start to feel just kind of suffocated. And so I feel like that's my third line energy. That's like, okay, I just need to break my bond just temporarily, my aura, from this environment, and let me just go over here. And it seriously does wonders, I feel, for a third line. And so I know, like, for me as a mother, as a third line, being a stay-at-home mom, you're just constantly always with, little kids. And it's not that you love your little kids, but your third line needs breaks, and
break
needs to be in its own aura. And I've also will say this as a third line, they need to be able to explore. And I sometimes, like, being in the mundane thing of motherhood and doing the same thing, like, day in and day out, I feel like that killed my third line soul, because
Yeah.
the third line has to, so I struggle with like depression because my third line wasn't being able to, you know, learn something new or try something new, or, you know, like with hobbies or anything like that. So I think it's really important, if you're a third line or your partner is, like, give them hobbies, you know, outlets for them to explore and do that trial and error process with. It's fulfilling for us to do that. And then also, like my sister's husband, he's a 1-3 just like me. And it's just so funny that he starts to go stir crazy being in the house. He has to go and try a new restaurant, you know, or investigate, what are some new restaurants in town? Oh, okay, I'm going to go try that. Or a recipe. He'll research and investigate a recipe, and then he wants to go and make it at home. You know, it's like things like that
And
are
it's a
very
trial and
fulfilling.
error process. We have to let our third lines be in that trial and error process. When it's a trial and error process, do you make mistakes? No. You try, and then if there is error, you try again. Third lines made up this motto: if at first you don't succeed, try again. You know, that is a
So
third
don't
line.
beat them up if they make a mistake with a business, or, I mean, sure, it could be a really big bad mistake, but try and be gentle with them, right? Like with a, it's
We'll
because
get
they
through
are.
it, because be gentle, because that third line is, if you go to the other slide, you'll see that their creative output, where it would be the 3 and the, okay, yeah, the third line. So their creative output is sustainment. Their aspire to role is they are going to sustain at that. If they can't sustain at that, they're going to experience pessimism. And so when you see pessimism show up in your third line, don't take that personally. It's not pessimism at you. It's an awareness function. Pessimism just like fear lets us know we're getting smarter, because I was afraid I would run out of gas, so I got smart and put gas in my car. Pessimism is just another a way for them to recognize that, hey, I'm a little bit pessimistic about this, so I now have to watch it in my trial and error process. And that bonding strategy of bonds made and broken is, you know, don't fear that your third line is out there running around with other people. They just need to very often going to work breaks the bond. I mean, that's the most common way to break the bond. Leaving the house, just physically removing yourself for a moment, that breaks the bond so that they can remake it again. What you love about your third line is it's like a brand new bond all over again. You get to experience a certain type of newness with them. They're always bringing something new. Second line, they find the right thing, and they're shy and bold within this one frequency. They'll stay there their whole life. You know, they'll stay there the whole life. And so that's them. But the third line, they're going to keep trying. So let's try this new thing. Let's do this new thing. So you have to sort of allow for that. Let's say you don't feel like doing the new thing. You have to let them know, I don't really feel like doing the new thing, but I love that you do. How, you know, I support you in that.
I will also say, like, that pessimism, because I feel like it's like that's a negative, like, oh, you're so pessimistic. You know, I feel like in our culture today, that's like frowned upon. That's like a negative connotation, but that's how third lines tend to remember things, is through like a pessimistic lens. Well, for me at least.
Yes, what a great point. Into the memory you're referring, into the memory.
Dan, I seriously remember when you read my chart and you hit on that third line pessimism, and I like cried because I felt my husband had told me, like, you're so pessimistic, and that like crushed me. And I was like, oh my gosh, you know. But then you're like, no, like, that's just how a third line remembers things, is through the trial and error process and making mistakes. So sometimes they can see things in a negative light sometimes, because they're always figuring out what doesn't work and sharing with others what, no, don't do it like this.
Pessimism is a memory anchor. It's a memory anchor.
Yes. And so I guess I just want to tell third lines, like, don't think that something's wrong with you if you tend to have a pessimistic tone over the past or something like that. And so, and then the 1-3 lines or the third lines are 1-3, 3-5, 3-6, and 6-3.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
The third line harmonizes with the sixth line, and the sixth line harmonizes with the third. But other things on here, that behavioral identity. So they will behave as what we know of as the martyr, the person that stands in their convictions and is willing to stand against the forces. And If they have to stand too hard against the forces because the forces are saying, oh, you're making that mistake, you're doing this again, or if their foundational work doesn't show up with the right thing, then suddenly they'll project out the anarchist, and their role and interaction with others will suddenly become the anarchist. Don't tell me I just make mistakes. Don't you try and pigeonhole me into this one thing. Don't you try and tell me this foundation is any good. It's not. I've tried it. I've tried it again, and it's not working. So the anarchist comes and breaks it down.
Yes.
We need them.
So they're kind of here to challenge the status quo.
Oh yeah.
Like, you said it was like this, but no, I experienced it and it was like this. So sorry, no. Like, is that kind of what the martyr anarchist comes from?
Yes, absolutely. The martyr anarchist and that pessimism is part of the memory. Limited perspective, you can call this memory because it does stand for the 13th gate. And the 13th gate is our memory, the gate of our memory, because everyone's telling us the secrets, and that memory then gets basically put out through gate 33 in the chart and turns into I remember.
Yeah. And I know the third line's also, it's like, we already tried that. Let's not repeat the same mistake.
Right.
You know, so they're always kind of pointing out how something can't work.
So let's take us to the third line and a second line and put them together as it relates to what you just said. Hey, we already tried that, says the third line, with their third line wisdom, having sustained, been knocked down, getting back up. And the second line comes along and says, but I have a knack, I'm a little natural, I'm doing it anyway. Right, because they feel called into it. It's shiny. Suddenly they're called out of their shyness. It's because they become a little bit bold about whatever the thing is, and they're like, I'm going to do it anyways.
So like there could be friction between a second line profile and a third line profile in that way. The third line's wanting to change and adapt, but the second line's being kind of a little bit more like
not wanting to change and adapt, not wanting to change and adapt. Or the third line can be more aware that, hey, this has already not worked in the past this way. And the second line can be like, I don't care. I'm not listening.
Yeah.
I'm not listening to that. I'm going to go do it anyways. So for the third line, now you have a trial and error as it relates to your mate. You can now start to realize, oh, I'm going to watch my mate go through that. And I said, pessimism reminded me that didn't work. But let the little second line run off in their feeling of wonder and run off because it's shiny. And, you know, I'll be there. I can sustain at being there to pick him up off the ground when he's got a bloody face because he's got road rash, because I tried to tell him it wasn't going to work and he found out the hard way, you know. So I'll be there with a med kit. Let them do that. And the same thing in reverse. The second line may be like, I'm totally uncertain about that. I'm not doing that. And the third line's like, well, I'm going to try it. So let's turn it right around. So now the second line can go ahead and be like, you know, I don't know, whatever, but be attentive second lines. Just watch. So if your third line partner does the same thing in reverse and suddenly they go belly up and suddenly they're flat on their back because it didn't work, whatever it was, the thing, get over there and help them up and tell them they didn't make a mistake. What did you learn? You ask third lines. Love language with third lines very much is, what did you learn, sweetie? What did you learn? And it's acceptance of what they learned.
Yeah. Yeah, because I know a lot of people, it's like, oh, don't do that. And then the third line goes and do it. And then they're like, see, told you so. And like rub it in the face, right? That would be like the worst thing you could say to a third line. Right?
Yes, absolutely. Unless you guys are so together that you give the third line permission, you give both the third and second lines permission to say, I told you so, as part of a flirty thing where it doesn't matter. Now you know you've gotten over the hump. And your love languages are able to speak in their own unique way without offending the other. Be not offended by what they are. It's a crime to hold someone's design against them. I mean, it truly is. So
the third lines need compassion, and they need freedom to try and explore things at their own way, in their own time, and then just not judging the results, but just being supportive, right?
Absolutely. Let's go back to full screen, Savannah, because we're going to finish up here.
Okay.
Yep. And so as you get into this third line process, we've now seen that the two lines are first three lines are the bottom, first three lines, the bottom trigram. Sorry, I was looking for that word. So they are the self-absorbed part of the dating process, the love language process. You have to help dig it out of them. Don't be like, that's bad for our first three lines. Just realize it's a process, and you can see how, each one of them sort of grows on the next one before it. And that theme is going to continue next week when we do lines 4, 5, and 6. And we sort of put it all together. And we're going to keep the same slides, but we didn't even get to the various love gates, so we can start to show how this love language shows up in each profile. It's really cool. We might even have to do a third round on all of this, Savannah, to get to the love gates. I'll show them to you afterwards if you haven't seen them. But so let your third lines be the anarchist. Let them tear certain things down. If you're a first line, you're like, but I just made that foundation, and you're sort of tearing it down. Be your first line. Say, well, I'm keeping my foundation. And the third line's love language for them says, sweetie, I know you're keeping that thing, but I appear to be tearing it down on this end in some way, shape, or form through what we know of as anarchy. It's not anarchy. It's just me sustaining at trying something. I need to try it. So the first line can be ultimately supportive by allowing the third line to try it, trial and error, and be right there with the foundation. It's like, okay, I got the foundation still. I have the memo on the foundation in case you lost it. Here it is again.
Yeah, no, I love that you shared that, because that's played out a lot in me and Jake's relationship, right? My third line, I'm breaking down all these foundations, but his first line, like you just said, is like, hey, I built that foundation, right? Like, I don't want to tear it down. And just with some things in our, so we've had to just really make compromises, or it's like, okay, well, my third line is torn that down, and I'm moving on to this new thing within regards to spirituality or religion or whatever, or human design, whatever, you could put anything there. But I have to let his 5-1 profile, that one in him, keep his foundation and stop trying to tear it down.
Right. So don't try to don't tear down your sweetie's foundation. Honey, you keep that foundation. But I'm breaking my bond with that foundation right now because there's an anarchist in me that says to tear it down. And apparently I am very creative when I sustain at all of this. So don't martyr me over it. I don't make mistakes. I learn stuff.
Yes.
And when they let you do that, this security strategy shows up, and suddenly instead of rejection, there's allegiance.
I feel like so much of the profile lines, it's just about like mutual respect, respecting, and understanding what each other needs, and saying, okay, like, I'll respect, I'll let you keep that if you want to keep it. I'm going to go over here though and do this thing. So I feel like it really does. It's just learning to respect each other's boundaries and what they're needing, and yeah. So I love this discussion. This was really fun.
So I say we got through the first 3 lines, and the slides will be in the notes, and we're going to be making memes and reels about all of this stuff, I assume. And so we'll be able to chop up some of this conversation, Miss Savannah, I'm sure. And so for now, that episode number, I think 30 or 40, which one did I say in the beginning? I think it's number 30. We're done, and next week we'll pick up with lines 4, 5, and 6. Again, this love language as it relates to these profile lines, and how is it we can respect our partners, our family, or whatever, and respect ourselves at the same time. So tune in next week for that. I haven't figured out what I'm going to do yet on as it relates to Wednesday night. I was thinking about doing Xi Jinping, the dictator over in China, or it might be someone else, because I always point out who I might be doing. And then subscribe, like, share this around. And if you haven't already, book your appointment. Bring your couples in here. Bring your couple self in here. Bring your children with you on an individual reading. Change my pricing as it relates to, if you can afford the price that's on the front when you schedule it regardless, because there's a spot to make a donation if you can't swing that amount, that's the fair amount that it actually is on there. So make the donation, make the appointment. It'll show up on my calendar, and it's not like you're going to get any different service. I will spend that 2 hours. Savannah, you know how long I spent with you the first time we read. It was insane, and I never stopped, did I?
Yeah, it was like 2.5 hours.
Yeah, so I'm called. My second line has been called into this for a long time, so I'll be there for you no matter what you're able to pay. But just get in, get your thing read. Let's do this and get you on the path to waking up. So with that, do you have anything to close out with, Savannah? Because I'm done.
Yeah, no, I loved it. So thanks, Dan. This was fun. I liked it.
We are done, and I'll catch y'all later. Bye, everyone.
See ya.